I try to put it a bit more away from me.
Okay, so are we good to start, Caribe? Yeah. Okay, so hi everyone, good morning. For those who are in the room, nice to have you again or for the first time. This is Wikidata Lab 15. Today, it's our pleasure to have with us, or at least remotely, or here in a big screen for us in the room, Lea Lacroix from Wikimedia Deutschland. It's nice to have you, those watching live on YouTube. Please let us know if the streaming is working fine, if the image is okay, if the sound is okay. If you have questions on the YouTube, please feel free to ask them on the chat. So the idea as usual today is to have a morning section, at least for us here in Brazil, in which we will learn about lexicographical data. And then during the afternoon, here for the team in Brazil, for the Wiki Movimento Brasil and Friends, have a hands-on practice activity in the lab just upstairs on the dissemination lab. And so Lea Lacroix is, as I understand, a French connection from Wikimedia Deutschland, which is especially a pleasure. So beyond remote connection, we also have national connections. She is behind, just like Eder is behind everything modestly here in Brazil. I understand she's behind everything in Wikimedia Deutschland when it comes to Wikidata. And so it's a real pleasure to have her to talk to us about something we haven't done here in Brazil. She told me we only have like 40 items, I don't know how they are called, lexemes, on Wikidata. So really, really bad on us. So without further ado, I would just pass you, and thank you so much, Lea, again, to being here with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here with you because I heard so many cool things about what you all are doing in Brazil. So I'm really happy to participate to this Wikidata Labs today. So yeah, indeed, I'm working in the Wikidata team at Wikimedia Germany. So to picture you a bit how it's working, we have an entire team here who is actually developing the software that is behind Wikidata and fixing bugs and adding all kind of new features based on what the community wants. And I'm taking care in particular of the communication with the community. So the communication between the developers and the community. So in both directions, meaning I'm helping the community to report bugs when something is not working as they want. We try to solve it so I can bring it to the development team and we can see what we can do about it. And in the other direction, I'm communicating about the new developments, the new features that the team is bringing to the community, and all kind of other things. And so 1 year ago, on this very day, actually, which is kind of funny, we didn't do that on purpose, but on the 23rd of May 2018, we deployed, we brought live a new big feature in Wikidata after more than 2 years of development working on it, which is lexicographical data on Wikidata. And this is what I'm going to present to you right now during this next 1 hour and a half, something like this. So first of all, I'm going to now share my slides with you. Let's see, it should work if I do. This. All right. I'm not entirely sure that you can see the intro slide that I'm showing right now. Yes, I think it's...
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. All right, so yeah, we're going to talk about lexicographical data. Just to show you a bit how it's going to look like. So at the beginning, it's going to be a lot of me talking, introducing quickly what is Wikidata, just to make sure that we're all on the same page about this. Then I'm going to describe what is lexicographical data, why and how do we store words into Wikidata, and why it's cool. Then we're gonna have a frequently asked questions sessions. Basically, I will answer to a few questions that are usually asked or very often asked on this topic. And after this one, we will actually have some time where you can also ask your own questions about it. Before we start the second part, is going to be a bit more about showing actually how to do it. So I'm going to make a demo on how to create a new lexeme, how to edit it. I'm going to show you a few tools that can help you editing lexemes, and a few nice tools that are actually reusing this type of data. I will conclude with some useful links. I'm pretty sure that you're going to get the slides very soon after the presentation, or you even maybe already had them. So all the links are here, so you can go and dig further into the documentation that I linked there. And then we're going to have another round of questions. And then I'm going to present you some ideas of what you could do to try yourself editing lexemes, creating new words, or doing other things so you can, if you want to improve the coverage of Portuguese or other languages into Wikidata. So let's start with a very short introduction about what Wikidata is. So Wikidata is one of the Wikimedia projects. It is what we call a knowledge base. It includes a lot of information that we call structured data, which means that the information is not only displayed on the page, but it's actually we try to connect the information as much as possible to other pieces of information that we have in the project. So we try to be connected with the other Wikimedia projects, Wikipedia, Commons, and so on. We also try to connect the information that we have to the rest of the world, the rest of the internet, and especially other databases that started way before Wikidata to collect information about all kinds of things, monuments, actors, whatsoever. So Wikidata tries to be really a part of this ecosystem of open data on the web, and to build a link between all of these different sources of information. Unlike the Wikipedias that are focused on one language, Wikidata is multilingual, which means ideally you can access all the content of Wikidata in all the languages. Of course, this is a work in progress. This is the things that volunteers are working on all the time, providing translation about every piece of information that is in Wikidata. And of course, like the other Wikimedia projects, Wikidata is collaborative, meaning anyone can edit, everyone can edit, add information, remove, add references, and so on. The little difference between Wikidata and the other sister projects in the Wikimedia movement is that the data from Wikidata is released under public domain, or more precisely, the license CC0, Creative Commons 0, which is the license that is the closest to the public domain, which means basically everyone can reuse the data from Wikidata freely for any purpose, commercial or not, and without having to continue this license. So this is the difference from Wikipedia, for example. So basically the goal was that everyone can reuse the data on a very simple way, so it's really accessible for everyone. Just like Wikipedia, Wikidata is based on facts and references. We love sourcing all the information. We love knowing exactly where the information comes from, because we're not inventing anything. We're actually reflecting what is the word is actually, how the word is, how the other sources like press, books, and so on, papers describe the word. And we try to replicate that and to aggregate that in Wikidata. And last but not least, Wikidata is a project that is, of course, made for humans, and a lot of different people are adding data into Wikidata and making it every day more complete and qualitative. But what is very important with structured data is that information is organized in a way that machines, algorithms, and all kind of other tools can also access the data in an efficient way and reuse it easily. So one could not talk about Wikidata without talking about all the different tools that are actually reusing the data, either creating a new layer and displaying the data in another way, or using it from the Wikipedia info boxes, for example, on certain Wikipedias, or even some services from other companies that also base their knowledge graph on Wikidata, and so on and so on. There are plenty of tools that reuse Wikidata, and I'm sure you already know a few of them. So here is, you probably already know the interface of Wikidata. The structure is always the same. This is what we call an item. This is a page that is describing one concept. For example, this is the item about Douglas Adams, not any Douglas Adams, but actually the one and only English writer and humorist that we know for a various number of books that are also listed on this page. You can access this information in many languages. You have what we call statements that are describing what this is. For example, on the first one, we say that Douglas Adams is a human. Then we're going to have pictures from Commons. We're going to have his birth date, gender, where he studied, all kind of information about Douglas Adams. We're storing the Commons category, all the Wikipedia articles that are about this person, and so on and so on. And yeah, that's the basic structure of a Wikidata item. So Wikidata was created in 2012, so almost 7 years ago, for several purposes. One of them is to support the other Wikimedia projects with data, centralized data, that could be reused for any Wikipedia, and also to be reused from other services, other projects. But so far, until last year, at this very same day, Wikidata was only describing concepts. So for example, this is a human, this is a building, this is something like this. And it was not describing the words themselves. And now we do. So let me give you an example so it's a bit more clear. For the same thing that we will call mouse, we can think about a concept. And in that case, it's an animal. More precisely, it's a mammal from the category of mammal. It has a taxon name, which is the scientific name that we give to all kinds of species of animals. And then the kind of information you can find about it on Wikidata is the average size. You're going to find some pictures. And as for the external identifiers, maybe this animal has an ID in the Encyclopedia of Life, things like this. Now, the second thing we could describe about mouse is actually the word itself. And then we would say completely different things. We would have to say, for example, that the language of mouse is English. We could say that this is a noun, this is not a verb or an adverb or other lexical categories. We could notice that unlike plenty of English words that have irregular plural, this one is actually irregular. So we would have to say that the irregular form is mice. We could dig a bit into the etymology of mouse and find what other words it is derived from, and maybe build the whole graph of where the word actually comes from. And then we could also dig into the meaning of this word, and this is where we would connect to the concept, which is mouse is actually an animal or a group of species, let's say. But it also covers other things, and then we would have a second sense, a second meaning that would be it's a computer device that you can use to click on things. And then we could also mention for each sense these translations in various languages. And maybe we could even have a recording of the pronunciation of this word. And maybe, I don't know for mouse, but definitely for other words, depending on if it's the pronunciation is made from a person from Great Britain or from the United States or from Australia, we would even have different accents for this pronunciation. And all of this information is about the word and not about the concept. So all this kind of information we would not have had on the current item that is about the mouse. So this is the difference between the items, the concepts, that what we already had on Wikidata since the beginning, and the new things that we have now. And this is what we call lexeme. So lexeme is actually a word that is quite technical and that is mostly used in the circles, let's say, of people who work on lexicography, so the science of the language, or on grammars, or who write dictionaries. But we chose this word because this is the one that is actually describing the most precisely what we're talking about. So the definition is quite abstract. It's like it's a lexical element of a language. For example, a word, a phrase, or even a prefix, or any kind of a small brick, a small part that we're going to use in the language. So this is for the lexeme. Now this is a easy, let's say, light representation of the data model that we came with when it was about how are we actually gonna describe words and phrases and languages in Wikidata. So we have this main structure that is the lexeme, that is going to have a unique identifier starting with an L, which is what we use on Wikidata to identify everything, basically. To make sure that we're not confusing it with another one that would have the same, exactly the same spelling, for example. So this is the identifier. And then we're going to have a certain amount of information to describe this lexeme. We're going to have the lemma, which is the most used form, or what we call dictionary form of the lexeme. So, for example, that in the case of mouse, that would be this is a chain of character that is made of M, O, U, S, and E. That's basically the lemma. We can note that in some languages, and I'm thinking about, for example, Serbian, they have, for the same languages, they use different script. They have a Latin script and they have their other Cyrillic script. In that case, we could have several lemmas from one lexeme, because we can, this is the same lexeme, but we can express it in different scripts. But then we can talk about it a bit more later. Then we have the lexical category, so which is the group of words our word belong to. In the case of the mouse, that was a noun, but you can have verbs, you can have all kinds of other things. Depending on the language, of course, you're going to have different things. Maybe languages don't have a real thing for verbs. Maybe they use other kind of groups. In that case, we're going to use this as well. We're going to have the language of the lexeme, and we can also have a specific language or script for the lemma, like I said before, if necessary. In the most simple case, you just enter, in the case of our mouse, I would just enter English, and then that's it. And then we can have some statements, just like on items, to describe our lexeme. This is where maybe, these are just suggestions, but we could put a property that would be derived from, where we could try to express the etymology of the word. This is where we could put the homonyms. This is, if it makes sense, where we could put the pronunciation, audio pronunciation of the word. It depends on the word itself, and it depends on how the community wants to model it. Then we have a first block of things that we're going to call senses. And senses, it's a different entity inside the entity lexeme. We have the senses that are identified by a number, first the number of the lexeme, and then a number starting with a S for the sense. I'm going to show you later a real example. And let's say that this sense block describes the different meanings, the definitions of the word. First of all, we're going to have what we call a gloss, which is a very short, very basic description of what it is. It could be compared in some sense to the description on the Wikidata items, but it's not exactly the same. And for example, for the mouse, I could say, so for example, one of the meanings is this small animal, and another one is this computer device, and so on and so on. And for each of the senses, we're also going to have a bunch of statements that are, in that case, connected to this specific meaning of the word. So we're going to put them here because they are not describing the whole word mouse, but only one of the meanings. And this is where we're going to put the translation. For the mouse, we had souris in French, for example. This is where we're going to put maybe some synonyms that we find that are, as usual on Wikidata, we always try to connect things together and not just to write free text. So in the case of translation, synonyms, and so on, we're going to have to connect this to another lexeme on Wikidata. So if you want to add a translation, then you need to make sure that the lexeme for rato is ready first before you add this translation statement. This is also here with this property that we could have called refers to concept, but I think the community actually came with item for that sense. This is with this kind of property that we're going to connect the words and the concept, because indeed on Wikidata we have an item that is about the mouse, that is about the animal, and maybe at some point we want to make the connection between them. So we could, for example, in the sense that is about the animal, put a link to the Wikidata item that is about the animal. But it could also be the other way around, as the community decides. So in senses, we add and we describe everything that is related to the meaning, one or several meanings for a lexeme. And finally, we're going to have the forms. So the idea is that one lexeme can have different forms. For example, for this mouse thing, we said that there is a plural that is not mouses because it's not proper English, but it's actually mice. So maybe we're going to try to describe that. But forms are even more useful when we're speaking about verbs, because in the case of verbs, the lemma, the standard form, would probably be the infinitive form, at least in most of the languages that I know. But then we would have to describe all the other forms of the verb, the present form and maybe the past, and if it's the first person, second person, and so on. Ideally, we want to describe all of them because we actually want to build a knowledge base that is offering all the forms of the verbs. If maybe one day, for example, we want to use it to generate some automated language with a tool that would be able to write sentences on itself, then it needs to know all the different forms of a verb. So we're going to create several forms inside a lexeme. So that's going to be, again, a sub-entity inside the entity. We're going to always add the representation, which is the, for example, for mouse, we're actually going to add one for the singular, then we're going to say mouse is a singular, and then we're going to add mice for the plural, and so on, until we describe all the forms of the same lexeme. Then we're going to have the grammatical features, and in that case, it would be mouse, it would be singular, for mice, it would be plural, but for the verbs, we're going to be able to add the different tense, so present, past, future, all kind of things. Again, depending on the language, it can be different things. And again, this is not free text. This is linking to existing Wikidata items. So when we started lexicographical data, the community actually did a lot of work to organize properly in Wikidata how we describe the grammar things like the different tense in languages and the different persons one can use, because it was kind of a mess. But now we actually needed it for real, so we had to reorganize this a bit. And so yeah, for verbs, we would use the tense, we would use first person, we would use the things that are helpful to describe the form of the verb. And then we could also add statements that are specific to a form. For example, if, let's say, depending on the dialect that we use of the same language, the plural is different, or some form of the same word is different, then we're going to use a property that would be called region, maybe period, because maybe we want to include a notion of time, of history in our describing the grammar. This is also a good place where we would put the pronunciation of mice, for example, and so on. Depending on the word, people would choose different properties. So this is the version of the data model that we came up with in terms of technical structure, I would say. But the community is very free to create anything they need within this data model to describe words the way that they want. So on the slides, you will find a link to the detailed data model, where we go way much more into detail about what are all of these different parts of the lexeme. And when it comes to choose the statements, the properties that we're going to use, it will all be discussed by the community. And this is something that's been started even before lexicographical data was deployed. We have a specific talk page that I will also link later in the slides, where people started wondering, hey, shouldn't we create a property about the pronunciation, or what kind of grammatical features do we need? All kind of the things are not entirely fixed, and this is not of the development team to decide. This is really something that the community should decide, just like they did on Wikidata, how to model the things as best. But we're gonna come back to this later. After this very theoretical thing, this is an example that I found of a noun. And here you can see everything that I mentioned already. You can see the LID that is on the top left corner. You can see the lemma, that is casa. You can see the language. You can see the lexical category. And then you can see that, for example, on the statements of the lexeme attached directly to the lexeme, someone added the grammatical gender, which is a good idea. Someone added derived from. So if we just look at the screenshot, it's not helping us a lot, because derived from casa, okay, great. But this is actually linking to another existing item. Maybe that's another existing lexeme, sorry. Maybe this is the lexeme about the Latin word, I'm not sure. But everything is connected to each other. So if you click on it later, and then you can have a look at what is actually this lexeme, and maybe you can build the complete etymology tree of this word. What else do we have? We also have one sense. We could certainly have more, but that's the thing we have for now. The senses can have various glosses in various languages. So for now, we only have the English and the Portuguese one. But maybe at some point we could have way more than that. So it would be possible to describe this word in all kinds of languages, which would be, for example, very useful for learning a new language. And then we had one translation, and this translation property is linking to another sense that will be in another lexeme, and for now it's linked only to house, the English word, but maybe later it's going to be linked to other ones. And then we see the forms, and we see the plural, and we also see the IPA transcription, and maybe we also want to add directly an audio file with the pronunciation, for example. This is the kind of things. Do we have another one? No, not yet. So this is the kind of things that could be added in the future. to this lexeme that is casa in Portuguese. And just to add up on this, in order to identify a lexeme when you want to talk about it or mention it, either you use the L idea, but it's not super understandable, right? If you start telling your friend editors, oh, I've been improving L407 a lot, they won't know really what you're talking about. So the ideal way to describe a lexeme is to mention the lemma, in that case, casa, but not only, you would also mention Portuguese noun. So the three together, lemma, language, and a lexical category, help you describing a bit better and being almost sure that you won't confuse it with maybe another casa somewhere in other language, for example.
Lea, just we have a question here on
Yeah.
the YouTube channel from
Yeah.
Michael Peel, and he's asking, shouldn't there be one casa that covers Portuguese, Spanish, other language that use it in the same context?
So, in that case, so for one lexeme, we always try to not mix up languages. So if I think in Spanish, casa is the same. It's the same word that is used to talk about a house, and we prefer having another lexeme, although it looks really the same. But that's why I talked about these three things that go together: lemma, language, and lexical category. As soon as you have another word and one of these three things is different, then in general, it's better to create a new lexeme. However, for more complicated things, like for example, we could think about the difference between European Portuguese, Portugal Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese. Here is a bit more complicated because it's not a completely different language. So in that case, we could wonder if it's good to have both on the same lexeme or to create a second lexeme. And on this kind of questions, this is definitely a question where I would let the community decide. The development team, we don't have a proper way that we think we should model this. This is one of the many discussions that we had with the community over the past year, is how to organize words that are from the two different dialects of the same language, for example. Should I continue?
Sorry, there's been a follow-up question. This is from Paul Burley from Chicago, and he's asking, would something like a mega lexeme item and that covers the alpha string CASA to some extent makes sense, I guess? So I think you've answered a little bit. This is something that the community needs to decide.
Yeah, I think this is something that a question that should definitely be asked on the discussion page, because the community has been elaborating a lot of things that even we didn't plan actually on how to model languages and stuff like this. I would maybe not go so much into details right now in this presentation, but we can talk about this later. All right.
Yeah, I think we are good here.
Okay. So, yes. So that was one example. There are many more already online, of course. Now I want to take a step back and explain you a bit why this is actually a thing. Why do we model lexemes in Wikidata? So first of all, one of the things that we wanted to do and that was not available elsewhere would have to have a knowledge base about words and languages that would be structured data under a free license that everyone can reuse. So structured data means that it is machine readable. And that was very important for us. The fact that all pieces of information are separated from each other, are described through statements, it can be a bit actually complicated to read for the humans sometimes, but for the machines, for the algorithm, this is actually what is the best, because then you can, if you have all the forms of a verb, you can query directly which one is the past participle in order to build your sentence, and you can get it directly from here. When if you have just free text, the human eye will find quickly the past participle, but an algorithm will have a lot of issues actually seeing which word is the one that we're looking for. So having structured data was very important. And the CC0 part, because lexicographical data, just like the rest of Wikidata, is released under this license that is very close to public domain, is the idea that it can be reused by anyone. And by anyone, we mean as much the big companies who probably already started doing such a thing and who maybe have more money and so on to do their research, but also the small organizations, the small companies, or just the researchers, scientists who would like to work on languages. And all of these people can have accessible this database where they can get a lot of information for their research or for their tools or ideas they have and so on. The other thing that is interesting is that so far in the existing services that you have all around the web, translation, help to learn a new language and so on, we don't have a huge diversity of languages, meaning several languages come up all the time. We have English, we have Spanish, French, and Portuguese are actually among them, so we're not so much undeserved on that regard. But plenty of other languages have no resources at all on the web, no structured data, no translation tool, nothing, because the languages are too small, because the companies, the big companies, don't care about them so much. So our goal is to provide a platform where the community can enter data about all the languages. So in the end, someone could build a translation tool from Breton, which is one of the local languages in France, and Klingon, which is a fictional language or something like this, or between one language from an African country and one version of Mandarin, Chinese, no idea. So all of these combinations that don't exist for now, we hope that in the future it's going to be possible with collecting all the data from all the languages. And the cool thing is that the Wikidata community, the existing community, and the new people who jumped in to work on Lexemes are international. Most of them speak or understand several languages. They are able to work not only about their mother tongue, but also on other languages, which means for small communities, it's actually more help for them to structure the data, to understand the data model, and so on. So gathering all the community together help us having more people on board who can help on various languages. So I wanted to show you a few examples of reuse that we already have. Keep in mind that lexicographical data on Wikidata is only 1 year old, so of course not a lot of things exist, but it's already super exciting. For example, Q-Answer is a project that's been developed by a university in France, and it's basically a question answering tool, meaning you answer a question in natural language. For example, who's the president of, I don't know, whatever country, or things like this. You ask the question and then it gets you directly the answer. So no links to a website, but the actual answer coming from Wikidata. So far it was about concepts. And now they're already starting using Lexeme. And depending on what data is available on Wikidata, in that case, if you ask what's the plural of dragon, it's going to answer you dragons. Or if you ask what's the plural of mouse, it's going to answer you mice, and so on and so on. So we already have tools that use the fact that we have structured data to provide smart answers, let's say. Another thing that one can do with this data is actually building games. And this one, I actually built it myself because I tried to learn German. As a French native speaker, it's hell. And it's hell mostly because the nouns have these 3 different possible articles, when in French we have only 2. Also, it's never the same as in French. So basically, every time I learn a new noun, I have to learn also by heart the article, and it's hell. I don't remember. So I decided to build a game where that's giving me a random name and the article, and I have to choose it, and then I get 1 point if I choose correct, and so on. basic point counting system, and that helps me. Maybe after 5 times getting the same word, I finally remember what the article is. And this kind of language learning games could be definitely built on the top of Wikidata quite easily, because again, the data is structured, so I can easily query what's the article of a word and get the answer in a variable that then I'm going to use it in my game. Apart from that, many other uses could be imagined for the future. Some of them are actually already planned. Some people are working on it. So, of course, one of the goals that we had when starting the project was to support other Wikimedia projects. So we can think about Wiktionary, that is already building a dictionary for many years. Dictionaries actually in plenty of languages. And they are doing it using plain text and templates. And just like Wikipedia, sometimes they have issues with like having only a small community, or having issues updating the information that they have. And we thought that maybe supporting them by providing a centralized database, just like we do for Wikipedia, could be a good idea. But it's not only about Wiktionary. We already had a lot of very nice interaction with Wikisource communities. So Wikisource, if you don't know, it's another Wikimedia project where people collect content of books that are under free license or in the public domain, sometimes by analyzing a manuscript, scanning it, putting it through a software that's going to try to recognize the words, and finally manually fixing the mistakes, because the software is not perfect and is doing a lot of mistakes. And maybe they want, for example, when they have in the book a word that they don't know the meaning because it's an old word or in language that they don't know, they would like to be able to click on it or just go with the pointer over the word and have a short definition or more information about this word. And this is also something that Wikidata could provide once there is enough data so they can reuse it. And same, basically, we could find some use for other Wikimedia projects as well. Other than that, we think that this could be extremely interesting for all kind of research fields and scientists, researchers that are working on languages, on grammar, on lexicography in general, because maybe they have issues having access to a huge database with all kind of words. Here we could provide that. They could work on text analysis, on text mining, all kind of things, starting from a raw text and transforming into something that actually makes sense, to recognize the word and to analyze them. Of course, translation tools are definitely one of the ideas that we thought about for this, and especially for languages that are for now undeserved by all the big services that are existing. And we kind of hope that lexicographical data will help a new generation of translation tools emerge out of this. Also, maybe new generation of dictionaries that would be more based on structured data and on connection between the languages. And as I showed you one example, but I really hope that more people will also continue building some funny language learning tools or games that could also be based on the top of Wikidata. So just a few statistics quickly, because it's not the most interesting, but since we started the project 1 year ago, we have now more than 45,000 lexemes in more than 300 different languages and dialects, which is really, really cool and shows already how diverse the project is. I asked Wikidata how many words in Portuguese were, and for now there are only 42. But I hope that there will be more in the future. As for the senses, the definitions of the word, we have 12,000, which is for now way less than the number of lexemes that we had. This is maybe because we released the sense feature a bit after the rest, So people still have to work on adding senses to the existing lexemes, as well as creating some new when they create new lexemes. And in general, you can have a look later at more statistics on this wonderful tool created by one of the community members that is called Ordia, and it is providing a lot of very nice statistics around projects and the data that we already have on Wikidata. So now I'm going to go through a few questions, and then after that we're going to have a session for your first questions that you may have about this. So one of the most regularly asked questions is, okay, cool, but what's actually the difference between lexicographical data on Wikidata and Wiktionary? So as I said, if you already edited Wiktionary, you notice that this is a wiki page where you enter the content. Maybe you structure it with the different templates and sections that they have. They came up with a very smart way to organize the content, but still, it is plain text. It is a format that is very good for the human, not good for the machines. And this is where Wikidata is different, because we have some content that is really structured to be reused by programs, by algorithm, and so on. Also, some scientists, for example, tried to parse the Wiktionary, meaning copy all the content and try to look for something inside of it, or to reuse the content to structure it for their research. And they had some issues because Wiktionary is plain text. So Wiktionary is very good for the readers, but maybe Wikidata can provide something more specific for the scientists, for example. Another difference that one can see easily after working a bit with Wikidata lexeme is that, as I said, we separate every lexeme. For example, if we take the example of casa again, we're going to have one page for the Portuguese noun, one page for maybe the Spanish noun. And let's say in Swedish, I have no idea, there is also a word that is C-A-S-A, but maybe that's a verb, something like this. On Wikidata, we're going to have one different lexeme for each of these cases, because we think that they should be described in a different way, because the language is different, because the lexical category is different, and so on. While on most of the Wiktionaries, they combine all of this information on one and single page. They structure their pages by the string of character, let's say, when we take into account the language and the lexical category. So one is not better than the other one. It's just that it's two different ways of structuring the information, which makes also a bit complicated, not impossible, but a bit complicated to connect Wikidata and Wiktionary on that regard, because we have structures that are slightly different. Also, the content is not exactly the same. Some part of the content is probably the same, but Wiktionary usually have some information that for now we don't have on Wikidata. They have these examples, they have quotes, they have all kind of things. So Wikidata is not only mirroring Wiktionary, it's actually providing different information on a different structure. But it doesn't aim to take everything from Wiktionary. It doesn't aim to take anything from Wiktionary at all. It would provide the structured data that Wiktionary communities could decide to reuse. And that's the last point. It is that this project aims to support Wiktionary communities if they want to. We're never going to enforce anything on them. If at some point, and I'm thinking especially about small communities who may have only 2 or 3 editors on the Wiktionary, and they feel like they could get some help from Wikidata because a lot of data from their language is already in there. Maybe in the future we could imagine that we can access the data from Wikidata on the Wiktionary pages, like we do on the info boxes on Wikipedia already, so they could reuse the work that's been done by the international community. In case you're wondering how to enter specific dialects or scripts, We have a solution for that. So as I said earlier, a lexeme could have several different lemmas depending on the different scripts and so on. And I took you an example here with an Arabic word. The first lemma has just the language code Arabic, and the second one has this weird structure with the language code, then the X, and then a Q item, which is actually, this is the Q item of the specific variant of this script. I actually don't remember how it was called. But this is the way that we have for now. It's a bit ugly. The interface hopefully will be improved, but this is the idea on how we can go very precisely on describing the dialects or the scripts, depending on what we're talking about. And this is also how we could describe the different variants of a language that don't necessarily have their own language code. We could put the language code and then the Q item that refers to some specific local dialect or version of a language or something like this. Also, a little tip about how to look for lexemes in Wikidata. You can look for them very easily in the search box that you have on the top right corner of the screen. The tip is to put a L column and then your word. And then if you do that, nothing is going to appear in the drop-down menu, but it's fine. You just type enter, and then you're going to find the whole list of all the words that have this specific lemma. And on the documentation, you will find more details about how to look for specific forms or stuff like this. But that was like the basic tip to search if a word is already existing in Wikidata or not. And then the big question, is it possible to query lexemes? If you already play with Wikidata a bit, you probably know about the query service, which is this very powerful tool that allows you to ask all kind of questions to Wikidata to generate all kind of lists of all the things. And the query service is also supporting lexemes. So I put you here a few queries that you can look at maybe later. Now we don't have a lot of time for this, but I listed all the words in Portuguese. And this query is dynamic, meaning if later you add more words, then the result of the query, you run it again and it's going to be updated with the new words that you created. You can query for the longest words in English, all kind of different things. We have a page on the discussion portal where people put ideas of queries, they put examples of queries. And I would say this is the best way right now to actually learn how to write a query. We definitely don't have the time to talk about query service and Sparkle right now. This topic would deserve a huge workshop in itself. But if you already know a bit how to use it, you could try to query lexicographical data. And in any case, if you need help, you can go to the discussion page and you can go to this page that is called Request a Query, where people can help you building your own if you need. And finally, if you're into uploading a lot of data into Wikidata, you probably know Quick Statement, which is an awesome tool developed by a community member, not by the Wikidata development team, that allows you to enter a lot of information into Wikidata in only one batch. Bad news is that it's not really supporting lexemes for now. It is possible to add new statements to a lexeme, an existing lexeme, but it's not possible yet to create new lexemes, form or senses from scratch. But I will show you later some tools that can help you adding a lot of data together if you're interested. So now, before we continue on a bit more practical stuff like how to edit lexemes and things, do you have any questions?
I have a question, Lea. This is João speaking. We are on our Wikidata Lab is very concerned about the integration of Wikidata and other Wikimedia projects, which is something you've mentioned while you talked about the difference between Wikidata and Wiktionary. And on this specific issue, I was wondering two things. The first one is, why wouldn't it make sense, for instance, to add examples onto lexemes, which is something that would be like plain text, but might be interesting to have onto Wikidata for users, for instance, to creating automated lists that would have an example on them. The other one, I was just opening the L407 for Casa, and I didn't see a site link for Wiktionary, which would be a different perspective on how to integrate. And is it not supported? Is it just no one did it for this specific case? So this will be just two initial questions. I know other people have raised their hands. I don't know if you want to answer this one.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to start answering yours first, and then we go on.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for your question. So first of all, about the examples, this is not something that is forbidden or anything. It's just that I think for now, no one came with a good way to model it. And we should also be extra careful about license issues in that case. Make sure that the examples can actually be released under CC0 because this is the license of Wikidata. Other than that, I guess we could get them as well somehow in a statement or something like this. This still needs to be discussed with the community. The second thing is the site links. So different things. First of all, the site link zone that we have in items is not existing on lexemes yet, technically, but it is also because, as I explained, it's not that easy to link lexeme from Wiktionary because we have on Wikidata, we're making the difference between every lexeme. They all have their own page, when Wiktionary have one page that is grouping all the things. So what we could do, and the community is discussing about it right now on the top page, I believe, is to have, instead of a site link, would be to have a property in the statement that would be mentioned in Wiktionary or something, or Wiktionary link, where the community could enter the links to Wiktionary. I think it was not done for now because the editors already had a lot of things to do. But since several people asked for it, I think it's going to come up at some point. But we think that the site link system as it is right now, also because on a Wikidata entity, we accept only one link from a specific project, and reverse, one specific page on a project should be linked only once on Wikidata. The structure is not that easy to implement. It's not an easy one-to-one thing from Wikidata to Wiktionary. That's why it's a bit more difficult than just adding the site links. I hope that answered your question. Do you have more questions?
Yeah, we have more, but just a follow-up here. And then there are some questions on the YouTube, but I was having the same idea that someone just said on the YouTube. To have a property looks like a terrible idea. It's just like what we had for commons with the P373 property, and then the site link, which has generated a lot of issues on connecting Wikidata and commons, for instance, on the case, for instance, on, I would say, info boxes. But I'll pass to other people. I think Eder had a question.
Yes, my question is about the dialects of the language we create the lexeme. So, for example, let's say in Portuguese from Portugal, we write casa with Z. And in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, we write with an S. It's just an example, it's the same. But when create the lexeme, I will want to create in Brazilian Portuguese, but I also want to add the European Portuguese form of the word So which one is the dialect? But because the definition is that Brazilian Portuguese is that dialect of Portuguese. But I'm proud and I like Brazilian Portuguese. I think Brazilian Portuguese is more important for me when creating the lexeme. So I would like to this as the first language, the main language, and the Portuguese from Portugal as a second. Is that possible? Which one is the dialect?
So there is nothing like a more or less important language in Wikidata, and there is nothing like first or second language, I believe. I mean, on the page, things are listed most of the time, like for example, the forms, they are listed in the order of what was entered first by the editors. So that's why sometimes you're gonna have, for the verbs, you're gonna have the past participle first and then the present or whatever. It's really entered as the editor entered it. So I don't think that in Wikidata we have any kind of we don't say that Portuguese is the main language and Brazilian Portuguese is the dialect. What we have, however, is that we have Portuguese as a language, and then we have Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese as variants of this language. And in the case of CASA, I actually showed you this example on purpose because I found it and I think that it could be really improved a lot. So what I showed you is the status, how I found it, but I think it could be improved, is that maybe these two different variants could be added as two different lemmas with this PTX and then the Q item for Brazilian Portuguese and Portugal Portuguese, as I showed you before, and it would also be described in the different forms. And here there would be no idea of one language is more important than the others. It would just be like, okay, we have two different variants, here they are. And then if one day you reuse this data in another tool or in a Wikimedia project or something like this, then you could decide to take one variant more than the other if the variant that you're looking for exists.
Lea, I have a question specifically on the audio files representation for the lexemes. Is it possible to add several audio files to that contain different accents for Brazilian Portuguese specifically?
Yes, absolutely. So there are several ways that one could model it. One suggestion would be to have a statement with the audio pronunciation, where you put your file and then you add a qualifier, and here you say this is this accent or this is from this part of the word, for example, using the property, I don't know what property to use, the localization or region, or I don't remember the name, but basically in the qualifiers of the statement you can give a lot of more details about your audio file, what it covers exactly, for example.
Another question. Is it possible to add people names or even expressions combining 2 or 3 words, just like we do inside the Wiktionary?
So for expression phrases, yes, definitely. That's considered as lexeme in any case. Some people already started doing it, and also they created the separated lexeme for every word. And I think they use a property called compound or something like this to actually connect the phrase to the words that it's composed with. So all kind of this already exists. For the family names, it's actually a bit more complicated, and it's discussed by the community, I believe, at the moment, because we already created a lot of items on the concept part of Wikidata for family names a long time ago, because we needed them to describe the people and everything. And now someone suggested, okay, should we migrate all of them into lexemes? Some other people said, no, we need them in the concept part of Wikidata and so on. So I believe this discussion is still running because I'm not sure there is a perfect solution for this. Yeah, this is one community decision to make.
Lea, there is a question now from YouTube. This again, Mike Peel. He's asking, is it possible to access the lexeme info through Lua or a special word in Wikitext? Then it will be possible to start trying to build the info boxes for the words for Wiktionary or elsewhere.
Excellent question. So the answer is not yet, but this is actually something we want to start very soon. What we would like to know before starting just developing stuff is actually understand better what people would like to have access to. What kind of data, with what kind of structure in Lua, or with these parser functions that are the easy version to access data and so on. So for now, we're discussing with several community members, especially Wiktionary people, to know a bit better what they want to have. And if you already have ideas of or use cases that you would like to use in your Wiktionary or other wiki, we can talk about this later. I'm interested to know more about what you want to do, because that is going to help us develop what you actually need.
Another question. How to do with the license thing, talking about the short definitions inside the dictionary. For instance, if I get a large database of short definitions, I will probably not be possible to upload it to lexemes because copyright violations. How to deal with that?
So indeed, the content of lexicographical data, just like the rest of Wikidata, is published under CC0, which means we all have to be careful that the data we put there in the first place is compatible with this license. So then we're not doing any kind of copyright violations, and the people who will reuse the data after us neither. So that means that a lot of databases or content or existing dictionaries that have a different license cannot be uploaded into Wikidata. So this is one of the things we need to be careful about. We actually have already several organizations that are thinking about donating data into Wikidata, and the condition for this is CC0 or public domain somehow. That's also why we cannot make massive import from Wiktionary to Wikidata. And even if the license was compatible, I would actually not recommend this at all, because I think this would be the best way to start a war between the Wikidata and Wiktionary projects and communities, and this is really not what we want. So the idea would be to make sure that the data that we enter is either the work of the volunteer who choose to put them under CC0, or is coming from a source that is also CC0 or another compatible license, to make sure that we're respecting this license.
Yes, for sure. Obviously, we must respect the license, but I think it's a very tricky thing when you're talking about very short definitions. So a very short definition, it will be very similar one to each other in most cases. That's the problem I'm trying to looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a complex problem. This is also why we didn't try to enter full definitions into Wikidata, because we knew that then we would face a lot of license issues. And this is why we don't have a definition field. We actually have this gloss short definition, which could be considered as public domain if it's just a very short description of something. However, yeah, this is some kind of a complex legal case actually, because you could also think that one gloss alone is public domain, but maybe a collection of selected glosses as a dictionary could combine is the work of the dictionary editors and not public domain anymore. So this is also all about if you take the things one by one, or if you talk about a huge amount of data that you would try to integrate to Wikidata. All right, I think maybe we should move on to the rest, because I still have a lot of information for you. So if you don't have more questions, we can go on.
Yes, we can go on, Lea.
All right, cool. So now I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to show you live how to edit Wikidata, how to create a new lexeme, and how to add a few information on this. So we'll not have time to show you everything, but at least the basics, so you can try it by yourself later during your workshop hub. So first of all, as I said before, the first thing I want to do is to make sure that the word is not already existing, because I don't want to create duplicates. My idea today is to create a German verb, because as said, I try to learn German, so actually editing Wikidata is a nice way to do it. So I'm going to try to look for this verb singen, like we said. I don't know if you see well what I'm doing. So I type this L column and then my word, nothing is happening, but it's normal. I type enter, and then I arrive here and I see that it's not existing yet, which is a very good thing. And then I can click here, or I can also click on the create a new lexeme link that is on the left column, on the menu column. And here I'm going to arrive on this interface where I need to enter the basic information about the lexeme I want to create. So my lemma is singen, which means sing in German.
Lea,
yes?
sorry to interrupt you. May you add some zoom to the screen?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is it a bit better? Yeah? Okay.
A lot better.
All right. So I entered the basic form of my verb, which is, as we said before, usually the infinitive. Then I want to add the language, and in that case, it's German. So I type German, and this is looking through the existing Wikidata items. So I have this like West German language coming first. It's awesome. Lexical category is the same. It's a verb, and conveniently appears this item that is about a verb. So now I'm ready to start. I'm going to create my lexeme, and it's now appearing here with this number, with everything that I entered so far. That's it. But now it looks very empty. So I want to add more things about it. First of all, maybe I want to add a statement about the lexeme, about this verb in general. And for verbs, what I found interesting is to add the auxiliary verb. I'm pretty sure you have the same in Portuguese. And in that case, so we have a property that is called auxiliary verb. And this here, so I'm going to put haben. And it's actually looking for another lexeme. So I should make sure that the verb is existing first. But in the case of German, it was existing for a while. So I'm choosing this one, saving my statement, and I'm done with it. I have a statement for singen. As usual on Wikidata, I could also add qualifier references and stuff like this. In that case, I'm going to go quick, and I'm also not sure how I could actually reference the fact that this isn't. I could probably find reference, but in that case, I will add them later. Now I have a verb. It has an auxiliary verb. That's pretty cool. But maybe I want to explain a bit more what it means. And for this, I'm going to create a new sentence. So I click on Add Sentence. And here I need to fill two different fields, the language and the gloss. So, for example, maybe I want to describe what this is about in English. So I'm going to put the language code, and then I'm going to get English here. And the small definition could be, I don't know, produce melody with the voice. That's probably incomplete, but it's fine. Now that I'm here, I could actually add more languages. I could also add French. And once I'm done with this, I can add much more. I save, and now I have my different small, very small description of what it actually means in several languages. I'm not sure there is another sense for singen, probably. For now, I'm gonna keep this one. And this is maybe the moment where I would like to add a translation in order to understand even better what's the definition of this word. So for this, I'm gonna add a statement inside the sense, which means I stay in that zone of the sense, and I click on add statement. So it's really in the sense. And here I have the property translation. And this property, translation, requires a specific type of entity here. I cannot enter anything. And what it needs here is not only something that comes from a lexeme, but it also needs another sense, because the translation, the sense can be connected through translation only to another sense, not to a form or not to something else. So for this, I need to get another sense that would be about the same thing. So here I'm gonna have a look. I'm gonna open a new tab, and I'm gonna have a look what I have in Wikidata that already exists. And let's look for French. And I have a lexeme about chanter, which is the translation for this. And I actually have a sense here that is about the same thing. It's described here, so I'm pretty sure it's the same. In that case, I'm showing you this on purpose because here on this interface, unfortunately for now, I cannot type my word and have it directly appearing here. What I'm going to do, since I need a sense, is that I'm going to open a second tab. I'm going to take the sense ID here with the LID, all of it, copy paste it, put it in there, and then it's going to recognize it. That's the only little tip that I could give you because the interface is not perfect yet. Then I click on it, I choose it, I publish, and it's going to be here. And since my interface is in English right now, the software is trying to provide me as much English as possible, because assuming that I'm speaking English, and so that's why the gloss is in English here. And the language of the actual word is not provided here, which is an issue that we already know about. But since it's a link, if you click on it, you're going to arrive on the actual sense of the lexeme, so you can know what this is about. What else could I do? I think that's already kind of okay. I have my sense. I have a few definitions, glosses in different languages. I have a translation. Later, I could put synonyms or other things, but for now, I will quickly show you how to add a form. So to add a form, I click here. And here, I have several things. I have the representation, which is the way I'm going to write my thing. And for example, since it's a verb, maybe I'm interested to add the past participle, because the past participle combined with the auxiliary verb that I had earlier is maybe going to help a software, an algorithm, to be able to conjugate this verb in the past tense, which is pretty cool. So I want to enter this. I want to enter the past participle of my verb. And since I know my German quite well, I hope, I know that it is gesungen. And the spelling variant here, I'm going to leave here German because it's like standard German, no no different thing, but this is here where I could add dash x dash something else, and maybe I could put either another script or a different dialect of the language, different things. But for now, it's quite easy. And here I'm going to enter the grammatical features. So again, it is looking for things existing in Wikidata. So I should make sure that what I need is actually already entered in Wikidata, but I know that it is. My past participle is here. Verb form. Interesting. I'm going to choose this one for now, but maybe it would be good to have verbal form in German. Let's see. As usual, anyway, on Wikidata, you do something, it can be edited later. If it's wrong, it's fine, someone else will fix it. So if I did a mistake, it's not that terrible. So I have my form, I have my representation, grammatical feature. Here I could put several of them. I'm going to try to create another one just to show you. Here I have my past participle. Okay. I'm going to add a new form this time. So maybe I want to create all the ways that this verb can be conjugated in German. And there are plenty of them, so I'm not going to do all of this now. I'm just going to do another one. I'm going to put singe, which is the present tense. And this is the first person, singular. Ich singe. So, oops, first person, singular. I have it here. So this is describing what this is about. I don't need to put the subject, I don't need to put the ich or anything, because since we describe the grammatical feature here, someone or a computer that knows about grammar will know what to put before that to build a full sentence. And now I have this. I have two forms. This verb could have plenty of others, but for now I'm going to stop here. I created a lexeme. I created the basic data that could be useful in there. And this can be improved later by me or by other people. And if I look for Singen right now in the search field, I'm actually going to find it. Now it appears here. My brand new lexeme. So that was a very quick demo of how it works. It was to show you that it's quite straightforward when you know what to look for. It takes a bit of time to actually understand what you should put in the fields. But one of the things that I found very useful is actually to get inspired from existing lexemes. On the documentation page, there are also suggestions of what should be the basic structure for a noun or for a verb, or depending on what you're trying to describe. Okay, let me show you my other screen again. All right. So that is basically what I've been doing right now. Tell me if you don't see the slides, but I think it's good. All right. So now, if you want to start editing lexicographical data, a few tips that I have for you is, first of all, that you probably want to search first before creating something about, to see if it's already existing, to avoid creating duplicates. If it happens, it's also okay. It's not the end of the world. We have the merge function, just like for items, so you can just combine both together and then delete one of them. It's fine. My advice is that you can look for other lexemes for inspiration in your language or in other languages, just to get inspired by actually what you could put in there. And on this wonderful tool that is called Ordia, you can also look for the most used properties for lexeme, form, and senses. I found this very useful because this is how I learned, for example, that for a lexeme that is about a verb, I could maybe put the auxiliary verb. I would probably not have thought about this spontaneously. So this statistics tool is also helping you define what is probably the things that you could add in lexeme. Like I already said, feel free to try, really feel free to make mistakes, it's all fine. And especially if you're not like doing massive important data and adding info on all the lexemes, if you do it one by one, it's totally okay to do some mistakes, and maybe this will lead to discussion with other community members that will tell you, oh no, actually we decided to structure it this way. It was the same at the beginning of Wikidata. People were experimenting some stuff, maybe doing wrong, maybe fixing it later, and it's all fine. And if you have any doubt or any question, you can ask the other editors for help. This is a community project, and sometimes the best way to model things, there is no simple answer. There are discussions within the community to decide how to do it. So I put here the link to the lexicographical data portal talk page where most of the things happen. You can also ask on the project chat of Wikidata that you probably already know. And I also put you the link of the Wikidata Telegram group where all kind of people know about lexemes and can help you doing all kind of things. So this is where you can ask for help if you need. A few more things. So keep in mind that this project started 1 year ago. So at the scale of software development, it's actually pretty new. And even at the scale of the Wikimedia project, when you think that Wikipedia is 18 years old, 1 year is it's like the baby of all the projects. So that means several things. That means the software is still new and is still sometimes can be buggy. So I'm really glad to take any suggestions, any fabricator tickets for improvements and bugs that we could fix. That also means that in terms of content, everything is to create, because we started from scratch, both because of this license things we wanted to be extra careful about, and also because we wanted to let the community a lot of freedom to decide how they want to model things and not enforce a specific model on them. So we started blank. Nothing was in there, which is actually pretty exciting. It seems like the beginning of Wikidata or the beginning of Wikipedia, where everything was to create. The good thing is that it's still very easy to find a word to create. For example, the verb about singing in German, it was still not existing when I looked at it and prepared this slide. So that means there is still plenty of opportunity, and especially for newcomers, to create a lot of things. But that also means that there are still plenty of questions, like some of the few that you asked me before, and I don't have all the answers. The development team doesn't have all the answers. The answers also belong to the communities, and they have been having over the past year a lot of very interesting discussions, sometimes almost philosophical discussions about, is an emoji a lexeme or not, for example, and to decide how to model things as good as possible. This also means that although the community created a lot of properties that they needed at the beginning, maybe someone still needs to be created. There is a page for that. You can do some submissions. You can discuss about the other property creation suggestions. As I said, the interface doesn't work perfectly. I would like to mention that, for example, on mobile, this is still kind of buggy, and I'm sorry for that. But for now, editing lexicographical data and Wikidata in general is better. You will have a definitely better experience on desktop, or at least using the desktop interface on a tablet or something. And we are also aware that the documentation is not perfect as well. For example, the documentation on how query lexemes is really far from perfect for now. So this is stuff that will be improved, hopefully, over the next months, years, and so on. So now I would like to show you a few tools that can help you editing lexemes, because as you saw, when you do everything manually, it can take quite some time. Creating a lexeme, adding all the sentences, and then adding all the forms of verbs, for example, it can be quite painful. So luckily, a few community members already started creating some tools that can help you a lot editing more efficiently lexemes. For example, there is this wonderful Wikidata lexeme form that helps you creating some models, so the next editors can actually enter way quicker the forms of a verb, for example. So here I put you the screenshot of how the template kind of for an English verb, even with like some examples. That means then you can just fill in this fields, add all the forms, click once on create, and then it's already done. And you're saving yourself a lot of clicking on different buttons. When I looked at it, I noticed that there were so there are plenty of templates, different templates for all kind of languages, but there is for now nothing for Portuguese. And this is actually something, if some people would like to create these templates so they can help editors to add data more efficiently, this is something you could do during the workshop part later. But in the meantime, you can already use Wikidata Lexeme form for other languages. Another one that is kind of similar is Wikidata Senses, that was created by another community member. And this one is about quickly adding senses to existing lexemes. So if you access the main page, you're going to have a view of all the languages and how many senses are missing. And you can access directly a page for your favorite language. And in that case, you're going to get a random lexeme in that language that for now doesn't have a sense, doesn't have a gloss. And you're going to have one simple field. And in this field, you're going to be able to enter the gloss, so the small definition. And by clicking on the button, it's going to create the sense. So it's also a way to do it quickly. And the good thing is that even if the interface of the tool is in English, actually, if the lexeme is in Portuguese, for example, you enter the gloss in Portuguese and it's going to add a gloss in Portuguese. So of course, with all of these tools, you need to be logged in with your Wikimedia account. So the edits are made from your account. It's a 2-minute setup, and then easily, especially with newcomers, I feel especially this Wikidata Sense is kind of easy to use in a workshop or something. You just grab some people and you ask them like, what is a zebra? And then they answer you something, and then up you enter the new sense. In Ordia, again, this wonderful tool created by a community member, you have something awesome that is text to lexemes. So basically, you have a field where you copy paste a text, you choose in which language it is, and it's going to basically cut this text into all the different words. It's going to look if the lexeme is already existing in Wikidata in that language. In that case, it's providing you the link, so you can already have a look, maybe improve the lexeme and so on. And for those who don't have a lexeme yet, it's going to offer you to create it quickly with the link that is already like filling part of the data and so on. So this is a super nice way to create a lot of words quickly if you already have them in a text and you want to reuse them later. Finally, I don't know if you know this awesome project called Lingua Libre, created by the French chapter, but is now usable in all kinds of languages. I'm not going to have the time to demo it right now. You have to look it by yourself. But basically, the goal of the project is to record words in all kinds of languages, upload them on Commons, and also connect them to Wikidata. And the tool is doing everything for you. The only part that you have to do is create or generate a list of words. Then you read them in front of your microphone, and the tool is like cutting the file, processing the file, putting it on Commons with the right metadata, and also now connecting it to existing lexemes through the property audio pronunciation. And this is pretty awesome. So later you can have a look at these different links. You can generate list of words from existing lexemes, because Lingua Libre is not creating lexemes itself. And then you just record all the words, and the bot, because it's a bot behind it, is going to add the audio pronunciation directly to the lexeme. So it's quite awesome. You can have a look later. What else? The query service, as I said, documentation is not the best. So this is more like for people who want to build tools on the top of lexemes. So developers who would like to create a game or all kind of things. These are the two main ways you can access Lexemes. The query service is one of them, and you can also access directly the API of Wikidata with various type of commands to get the things that you need. I'm really not going to go deep in this topic because we don't have time for this, and this is already quite technical. But if you're a developer, if you're interested into reusing the data, it's already possible through these two options. Finally, a few links that you can have a look later when you get the slides, the special new Lexeme page, the property proposal page for Lexemes, Wikidata Talk lexicographical data, which is the place to be to discuss with the community. I also wanted to say that although most of the discussions here are happening in English, this page is meant to be international, so you can write in your own language, and hopefully someone also speaking this language will answer you. So don't be afraid by the all in English. This is just because for plenty of people it's the most convenient language, but you can definitely write in your own language as well. There is a page listing the tools. There is a page listing the ideas of tools that people would like to have. If you're a developer and you're looking for an idea, this is also a nice list to browse. And for the queries, as said, you can have a look at this page listing the existing queries and the ideas of cool queries and lists that people would like to generate out of lexicographical data. So now maybe we can have 5 minutes more for questions. Then I'm going to present you different ideas of activities, and then I will have to leave you for today and let you continue with doing awesome things. Do you have more questions?
Hi, Lea. We actually do. There is one on the YouTube, and I have a couple of questions. I'm
Okay.
sorry. So I have two very more specific questions and one more general. And then there is a question here on the YouTube. So the more specific is everything that was done, for instance, for this verb in German was not referenced. And there was no adding reference. And I was wondering, from the editor perspective, how would you actually look for reference? This is basically very new to me. I'm not used to this kind of editing. So what would be a good place for reference? The second one, more specific one, is when I add, for instance, let's imagine I create the lexeme cantar, which is to sing in Portuguese. And then I add the sense one. Would it reverberate to, if I connect it to the French word chanter, would it then automatically connect to the sense in English, German? Would it appear? Or would I have to include it manually for each one of the senses? And the broader question that I had is, why is this project inside Wikidata? Because I haven't seen necessarily, besides the interface, how it connects to what Wikidata is right now. Just like what we have, for instance, we have a different project for Wiktionary, and it's not within Wikipedia. And I wasn't sure, and maybe you probably had this discussion within the team, why didn't we create a different project completely?
All right. So the first question, I believe, was about referencing. So it's true that when I demoed you the editing, I didn't really have time to go deep into this. But basically, you can, as usual on Wikidata, you can add the references on the statements. And if I understood correctly, you asked me what kind of sources, what kind of references one could use. I would say all kind of things. Dictionaries, for example, are of course a source, but also probably other papers or books that are grammar books, for example, or grammar website in that case could be also nice sources for this kind of data. The second one was about, I forgot.
Senses. So what happens when I connect a sense?
Yeah, so for now it is not duplicated in if you add a translation on the French verb to the Portuguese one, it's not going to be replicated automatically on the other one. This is something that could be considered through a bot, for example. For now it's not. This is the kind of discussion that the community should have if they feel like it's necessary to have this like mirroring or not. Yeah. And your third question was about, yes, why is this stored in Wikidata and not maybe another instance of the same software that is running Wikidata? So first of all, what was important for us was to have structured data the same way as what Wikidata has. So that's why we really wanted to use the same software and not just, let's say, a basic media wiki with plain text pages, because we wanted this structured data format. And the thing is that in the lexeme space, we are actually reusing a lot of the data from Wikidata. Everything that we saw, this present tense thing, the names of the languages, the I don't know what it was, like the lexical category, verb, noun, everything was already existing in Wikidata, and it's very convenient to reuse it. And if we would have created another database, then it would have been technically quite complicated to reuse from another instance of this software the data that is already existing into Wikidata. So we probably would have had to recreate some database describing all these grammar things, which would have been a waste of time because it's already existing in Wikidata. So we were limited technically by the software, and that was a reason to stay in the same place, which also makes sense because it is structured data about different things, but it is still structured data, so it makes sense to go together. Also, for now, it's not done a lot, but I think it will be in the future. Items will link to lexemes as well. For example, some people have been envisioning that maybe one day the description of items would be based on lexemes, or maybe that, for example, the feminine form of the name of a job. Usually, we use the form in the masculine form on Wikidata for all kind of reasons, but we are already having statements with the feminine form, and this could be instead using a lexeme. For now, it's a free monolingual text, I believe. So this kind of things, we really need the connection between the item part and the lexeme part, so that's why it made sense to have them all together.
Okay, we have two questions here on the YouTube. So the first one relates to automatically importing old dictionaries into lexemes that one would have to be extremely careful with the version that is being used. So there is an example here that the old Portuguese language dictionary has changed a lot over the last 100 years. So which might be a caveat for using automatically imports. And then there is a second question here by Paul. Will properties be qualified for region? Example, IPA transcription. In US English, we have 2 or 3 regional pronunciations, standard from South Boston. Brazilian Portuguese has more. So how would this work?
Okay, so about the old dictionaries, I'm not sure if it was really a question, but I would say yes. In general, I really advise people to be super careful when it comes to mass import of data. It's something one can do. The software is ready to support it, but we need to be careful that if the data is existing already, if the data is actually up to date, I would advise anyway to always mention the source of where the imports come from, to make sure that at least it's connected to the version of the dictionary or the website that this is about, and so on. So we should, even if CC0 is not forcing us to track where the information comes from, I think this is a best practice for open data in general, that we should always try to track where the information comes from. And the second question was about, yes, so how to model audio pronunciation for different accents and dialects. So it would not be a different property. The property would stay audio pronunciation in any case, but then you could add qualifiers, region, for example, or accent, depending on what you need. You're gonna find, if the properties don't exist yet, but I think region exists, maybe accent doesn't yet, maybe it's to be created, but this is how you can describe very precisely the different type of audio recordings that you would put.
No one has raised new questions, so I think we can maybe move on. And
All right. Let's go back to my slides. Yes, so if I understood correctly, after this presentation, during the afternoon, you're going to have the ability to work on all kinds of things. So I just wanted to suggest to you a few things that you could do related to lexemes. The first one would be, of course, adding more information. So for this, you could use this Wikidata census tool. That is maybe the most easy thing to do. You click on the link that I added here, and you're going to have your random word in Portuguese. Add a gloss also in Portuguese for this word, click on yes, and then you do a bunch of them. And at the end of the afternoon, you will have created a lot of information. You could also just simply create some more lexemes in Portuguese or other languages, of course, just like I did during the demo, or you could also use this text to lexeme thing to go faster. Then one thing that I think would be really great if a small group of people would like to work on it would be to create the Portuguese templates in the Wikidata lexeme form tool. So later more people could actually use it to quickly create verbs or all kind of other. So this is not difficult, and this is not actually a technical task. The most important is actually to describe what are the different, like in your language, how many forms there are for the verb, how many like this first person singular, second person singular, and so on, and to describe this in a template. So there is a documentation page for it. You can click on the link. The first task would be to translate the interface of the tool into Portuguese. That's always nice to have. And then adding new templates. And then at some point when you're finished with this, you can, of course, look at the examples from other languages. You can ping the creator of the tool, Lucas, so he will later do the magic to implement the templates directly into the tool. So you don't have to do the technical stuff, you just have to do the part that you know better, which is your own language. So that could be also a nice activity. And once this is ready, so I'm afraid this is not going to be today because Lucas is very busy at the moment, but maybe in the next days, you can continue then creating forms through this tool with the Portuguese template that you created. And if there are developers in the room or people who know how to reuse the Wikidata API or things like this, I think it would be really awesome to have more tools or games that reuse lexicographical data. Maybe you could do your own version of the article tool or another language learning game, something like this. I put you again the list of the ideas of tool if you want to be inspired. Yeah, that's basically a few ideas of things you can do. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much again for your enthusiasm around Wikidata in general and for running these awesome Wikidata Labs things. I will have to go offline very soon, but I stay available by email, my user page, also on Telegram. You can find me quite easily on all kind of Wikidata communication channels. And I hope that we have the occasion to talk to each other very soon about lexemes or other things.
So Lea, in the name of everyone here in the room and everyone who has watched or will watch this presentation, I'd like to thank you a lot. This was, well, a lot of information. Basically, I think it's new for everyone here. We weren't really engaged with lexeme and lexicographical data. So I think it was a way into the idea, the vision, and this particular community. And thank you so much for having found some time to be with us here. And I think it's completely deserved that we give you a round of applause, and thank you again very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yeah, have fun.